All right. Welcome, everybody. We are continuing with our study of Megillat Esther. And Haman the Wicked, anti-Semitism is an old trope. We are finishing the end of chapter 2. And then we're going to take a pause and take a step back and talk about anti-Semitism. We've been talking about it the whole time anyway, but I'm going to give slightly different viewpoint. Okay. Did you find Esther yet? He's getting there. Okay. Oh, you have your glasses. So who knows where are the Megillot in a Tanakh?
Okay.
He's on it.
I'm in Eicha.
Oh, you're in Eicha. All right, you're getting there. You're much closer. Sheikh, we're having a class here. Do you want to go? You could go into the stairwell. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. There's an amazing program with high school students from SAR and high school students from a different school, maybe non-Jewish, I'm not sure. And they're hearing from a sheikh as well as from Rav Stephen. Really beautiful. We got up to verse 19. Verse 19 in chapter 2. And what we said was, this is where we stopped, but let's talk about it. So who remembers where we were with Esther? What happened? Everybody on board? What happened in chapter 2? There was a beauty pageant. We talked about Esther not asking for anything special. Was that looked at favorably, meaning she's so tznu'ah, she's so modest? Was that looked upon unfavorably because it's showing, well, don't you want to win over the king's heart? How could it be that you're not asking for special cosmetics, special perfume, special clothing? She only wore and did what the person in charge suggested. And what happened? She comes to the king and somebody, it's not a trick question. What happened? She goes to the king and, hi, Carol.
She finds favor in his eyes.
She found favor. Hi, Muriel. She found favor.
Hi.
He loved her more than all the other women. This is on verse 17. She found favor in his eyes. From all the other virgins or maidens. He crowned her instead of Vashti. And we did mention that it seemed odd that he first loved her and then she found favor in his eyes. Now, you could say he loved her and explaining it's because she found favor, more than anybody else. But the reason that the Midrash picks up on, or the Perush picks up on the opposite, in other words, what seems to be the reversal, the flipping of what usually happens, is because we believe that it was biblically inspired writing of Megillat Esther, and therefore we say every single thing counts. Everything that seems even a little bit out of place. So do you first fall in love and then you find favor? No, you find favor and then you fall in love. Now, honestly, I guess there's a thing about love at first sight. We don't, this is overnight. She spent one night with him, so we don't know what that means, which leads us to what we've talked about many times, that one lens of looking at the Megillah is, where is God's hand in the background? So did God have something to do with it? On the other hand, this is the way he always found women, from one night. So he's got to like somebody more than everybody else, but we're not sure why that happened. We assume it's God's hand for those who believe in that. Verse 18, that the king made a great feast and he called it Nisht Esther. And we spoke about the fact that you could look through the Megillah and count all the different feasts. We usually think of the ones at the beginning and then the one that Esther and maybe Vashti that she made for the women. And then we think of Esther where she made too, but there are actually many more feasts. That is a different way of just kind of picking our way through the Megillah, to go through and just count all the different feasts and see what was different about them. There are so many ways to learn Megillat Esther. And now we're up to the verse 19. And that's where we stopped last time. We started talking about it. What does that mean, and when maidens were gathering a second time? Well, like that just kind of flies under the radar, and we don't usually think about it until I started looking at Megillat Esther in depth. I didn't even notice that.
Mhm.
What does that mean? What is the second gathering? Any thoughts? I'm gonna eat a piece of apple while you're speaking. When the maidens gathered a second time, or the virgins or maidens, Mordechai was sitting in the gate of the king. First of all, what is the second gathering? Like, look at how odd this pasuk is. Why mention that Mordechai was sitting? Is there a connection? Is there not a connection? Again, looking through the lens that we assume that each pasuk doesn't have extraneous words and that each verse was put together very thoughtfully.
Mhm.
Vivian's thinking. I hear her thinking. Ruby, any ideas?
Well, if there's a second gathering, maybe there was just a break in like an intermission. And so now they're getting together again. So we'll call it a second gathering.
Mhm.
Wait, explain more.
People were together and now they're having a break. Maybe they have to go to the bathroom. Maybe they have to have lunch. Maybe it's
No, I hear you, but it says uvikavetz bitulot shenit. When the maidens were, it's the same maidens that are the beauty pageant. And
Right.
he already picked a queen.
Yeah.
Lance, first Lance, Vivian, first Lance, yeah.
Okay, Mordechai had to be there because he witnessed the attack on the king. In the next
Nice,
paragraph.
but you're looking at the next verse, so that's great. I'm not the next verse even. I'm sorry, it's the in two verses.
Mhm.
Actually, we're not there yet.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Lance that the fact that Mordechai is mentioned there, it's the only one. Apparently, she was there and he was watching over her. And
Right.
maybe all the other people, all the other women didn't have someone standing outside and watching and
Wonderful.
careful and looking over. So that was something very unusual about her, that
Mhm.
that Mordechai was always right in the gate. We know through the entire, not only here, but all over, he was waiting in the gate and checking on her. What are they doing with her? How are they treating her?
Okay, so that, Vivian, I agree with, but how does that shed light on uvehikavetz bitulot shenit? And when the maidens, assumedly those are the maidens, the virgins, who are
Yeah.
gathered in order to vie for Achashverosh's attention.
Mhm.
This is a very odd pasuk. Those three words feel really odd and out of place. And like, what do they mean?
I don't know. Did they check them out? I don't know. Do they have the
Virgin monitor, virgin meter.
if they were actually besolot?
Well, we've seen the word betulot. Wait 1 second, Bert.
Okay.
1 minute, just 1 second, and I'll rename you so we'll know you're Bert and not Samsung. Unless that's your middle name, of course, then you can be Samsung.
Of course, Bert
Call you
Samsung
Sam for sure.
Nussbacher.
Exactly. So the word betulot, that's a good point, Vivian. Like, why are you saying the betulot? Just because a group of girls happen to hang out together? That's not what it is. Uvehikavetz betulot shenit, when they gathered maidens a second time, this must be referring to another beauty pageant or the leftover or something. Because you're right. Why would you assume that somebody is a virgin, except if they were or maiden? I don't know. Betulot literally means virgin, but I don't know. It's usually translated as maiden. So 1 second, Ted, you're in line. Okay, we have first Bert Samsung, then we have Ted, then we have Debbie. Bert, go.
Hi. What I assume is that once he settled on the queen, then in that case, the contest was over.
Correct. That's my question.
No, I'm just saying, so therefore, he did say, he says the contest is over. And now he says, because I believe that all men, and all kings can't get enough of everything they have. They said, no, we're not going to end this. We're going to,
Nice.
we're going to continue doing this. We're going to have a second round because,
Nice,
all the virgins that I had before is insufficient for me because
Right,
kings are like
nice.
that.
I think that's a very good read. Ted. Wait, unmute. Wait,
I was going to say, if I know Achashverosh, he wasn't going to send them home.
right. I got them here already anyway.
Yeah, and he's having a feast.
Right.
Bring them out.
Ooh, he's celebrating Esther and he's still bringing the girls out. Sorry.
Well, he was.
Excuse me. Excuse me
There's
while I
not a
get
lot of
nauseous.
monogamy here.
No, we're not talking about monogamy, but still, that's true. Okay, nice. Debbie.
All right. I'm just thinking of things like beauty contests in America or the Bachelor or the Bachelorette or whatever,
Yeah.
where they also as a community with the contestants. And, and that somehow they hug each other. I know I've seen at the end, they hug each other. They form some sort of community.
Nice.
So maybe they're celebrating one of theirs who
Can I just, you're welcome. Sorry, one second. Are you looking for restrooms? Trash can. Trash can's here too. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hello. Nice to have you here. Yeah, right here. There you go. I happen to be in the middle and there are this wonderful groups of kids in the main sanctuary. So I might have to be telling people where to go. One second. And what I love about that, Debbie, and what everybody said here. So it could be what Bert said. And I think Vivian, you hinted to that Achashverosh is like, I got a whole catch, I don't know what the word is, a harem of women to choose from. I'm not letting them go. So I'm imagining when you say when the maidens gathered again, the first group, remember we said were not sent home. They were sent to the used up palace, meaning they have no chance ever of going home. And they were actually agunot. They were chained for life. They weren't allowed to marry anybody because the king had slept with them. And tomorrow, Tanit Esther is International Agunah Day, in addition to thinking of the hostages, like that's been overlaid on top of it. But underneath it, we have underpinning it's International Agunah Day, of course, because Esther was chained in the palace, but also all those women were chained, even if they weren't Jewish, or maybe some of them were Jewish. I don't know. So that's one read. But another one goes to what you said, Vivian, that it really flows with what you said also, Debbie, or Ted, like it could be that Shenit means it's a smaller group now. Guys, you're looking for the restrooms? Over here. It's a smaller group, but it's that same group. It's just like instead of 1,000, or instead of 300, now there's like 20 left or 150 left. And there you can imagine them gathering in the courtyard because they created this feeling of camaraderie. And maybe it points out what Vivian said, Mordechai Yoshev B'Shar HaMelech, but that Mordechai is sitting there, he sees them, but his eye is on verse 20, which is that he's looking out only for Esther, which is a beautiful idea that maybe most of the women didn't have somebody to guard them. So we just together, and I know because you have your hands up, we just wrote a midrash. This is called writing a midrash, which is a different way of shining a perspective, on verse 19 from the text, but not written in the text. Okay? Nice. Lance.
Mordechai has pre-programmed Esther to do exactly what Mordechai wants Esther to do. And that's an important point. I'm not going to go, ahead of the text, obviously, but right now.
What does that have to do with the kavetz betulot shenit, that the maidens gathered a second time? Does it have to do with that?
Well,
that was my question.
Right. That goes to what everybody said about Achashverosh. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's important to see that at this moment in the text, Esther has been told what to do. And Mordechai is going to make sure that Esther does what she's told.
So that goes to why is he sitting in Sharma, but let's do that on verse 20. My question was specifically, what does that mean that the maidens gathered again? One second, Ellen. What it could also tell us is that Achashverosh once you're picked for this beauty pageant, you never get to go home, whether you're picked or not. Yes, Ellen.
Also, if you use the comparison to an American or contemporary beauty pageant, the runners-up are called the court, the Queen's Court. So you have the Rose Bowl Queen, and then on the same float are all the runners-up.
Wow.
And I think Miss America probably does the same thing. So that's what these people are. They're now her court. And they could even become her ladies in waiting,
Yeah.
or her servants of some kind.
Right, right. Beautiful. This all makes sense. Great. Meryl, did you want to say something? No. Okay. Welcome, Meryl. Welcome, Elaine. Welcome, Ellen. Okay. This was amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. What a rich discussion over 3 words. And I think for me, it just really painted a picture. Like I'm imagining in my head what the court of, or the courtyard of Ahasuerus looked like, and what a little bit of the culture of that time. That was really well, that was amazing. Thank you, everybody who contributed. Okay, let's read verse 20. So, as many of you have pointed out, it is setting, if you look at the second half of verse 19, it's that Mordechai is sitting b'sh'ar HaMelech, which some people, oh, by the way, wait, there's one midrash which I didn't tell you. There is a midrash that the reason those 2 pieces of 19 are put together is because Mordechai was asked by Ahasuerus, because Ahasuerus knew that the Jews were wise, they were smart, they were clever, what to do because he didn't know Esther's background. Did we say that already? No, that's on the next verse, 20. And Mordechai suggested, organize another pageant, pick another girl. And maybe Mordechai was hoping he would pick someone else. Now, I don't know if that midrash holds water for me, because once he crowned her as queen publicly, it's a little hard to walk that back. Oh, oops, I made a mistake. I actually have a better, like that feels weird. So maybe that, but it's a midrash, as many midrashim are. Now there is also, one second. Here's a midrash by Yalkut Shimoni. When Esther became the queen, she told Ahasuerus, this is a midrash, the Jews have some very smart people, and throughout history, many kings have picked one of them to be an advisor. In fact, King Nebuchadnezzar, now remember, this was the ancestors of Vashti, appointed Daniel to be among his advisors. So Ahasuerus said, can you recommend someone? She's like, yeah, I happen to know somebody named Mordechai, which, by the way, reminds me of Miriam telling Bat Paro, we can have a good wet nurse for you, for the baby, Moshe, and it just happened to be, the baby's mother happened to be, so that's similar. This midrash, remember, it's a midrash. Ahasuerus immediately called him and appointed him to sit in the king's gate. Listen to this, how beautifully this midrash flows into the next incident. This anger, instead of Bigtan and Teresh, that Bigtan and Teresh were the original ones to sit at the gate, right? That says that they were the ones. And now Mordechai is in the gate. This angered them so much that they plotted an assassination, and confident that Mordechai would not understand their language, they discussed the plot in his presence, and he ultimately informed Esther of it. So the nice thing about this midrash that Mordechai was picked is that it answers what is the connection between verse 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, so you can read ahead and read them. Lance, something quick?
Yes. The idea here is that the Queen Esther is the same lineage as the maidens. And it's anti-Semitic. It's defense against. In other words, what Mordechai says is that the queen is hiding her lineage. So therefore, she looks like one of the maidens.
Okay.
But that's an anti-Semitic defense.
Wait, so explain better. I don't follow it. Say it
again. In other words, Mordechai is afraid that if Esther is known as a Jew, it will hurt her. And what Mordechai told her is, don't do anything to reveal that you were Jewish. And so in this particular passage, I'm just going by the passage in front of me, the maidens are in there in part, because they are the same lineage as Esther in terms of the Persians.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Nice read. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, verse 20. Ein Esther magedet moladeta ve'et ama. Esther would not tell her lineage nor her nationality. Kasher tziva aleh Mordechai, just like Mordechai commanded her. Bet ma'amar Mordechai Esther osa. And Esther is doing what Mordechai told her to do. Kasher hayta b'omnaito, when she was under his foster care. I don't have anything in particular to say about that. And then the last 3 psukim is a well-known incident. Bayamim hahem. So it's interesting. First of all, I don't know what Bayamim hahem is. Wait, hold on 1 second. Oh,
In
sorry.
those days.
No, I know that. No, I get it.
No,
but
I know. I mean,
why
that's
do you need that? Why do you need Bayamim? I understand what the word means. Thank you, Debbie. What I meant was, what does it add to say Bayamim hahem? I think that's really what I meant. We already know he's sitting b'shar HaMelech. What does this add? Now that could speak to the midrash I just said. On those days, Mordechai was sitting in Sha'ar HaMelech, in the gate of the king, instead of Bigtan and Teresh. That makes sense. Because the midrash picks up that Bayamim hahem seems extraneous. Katsaf, why? Because Katsaf, Bigtan, Teresh, interestingly enough, Katsaf is in singular, and Bigtan and Teresh are 2 people. Any thoughts about that? Why didn't it say Katzfu? They got angry. Why does it say Katsaf? He got angry. I'll continue reading the pasuk. Katsaf Bigtan v'Teresh. He, Bigtan and Teresh, got angry. Who were they? Shnei sarisei hamelech. A saris is a eunuch, but in this case it means two of the guards of the king. Mishamarei hasaf. They're the ones who guarded. A saf is like, it's a threshold. By the way, I just want you to know, 2 of my cousins once dressed up on Purim as Bigtan and Teresh. They dressed in whatever Persian sheets, whatever, and they made a wooden frame like the outline of a doorway, and they just walked around with it because they were Shomrei Hasaf. They were guarding the doorway, but they had to carry it with them because it was their Purim costume. I thought was such a cool costume. I still remember it was many years ago, and it was just 50 years ago, I think. It was 50 years ago, actually. Woo-hoo. And it was really awesome. I should remind them of that. Vayivakshu, and they wanted to send their hand, meaning to lay hands, but Melech Hashverosh, basically to hurt him. Any thoughts about why the Katsaf, that got angry or grew wroth or became wroth? Why is that in singular? But then when they, afterwards, their action is, or their desire becomes plural. Any thoughts about what that might shed light on?
They have one mind. They were of one mind.
One mind. I wonder if it also means that they egged each other on, that sometimes when you have a second person, then it's easier to do some action or even a difficult action or a negative action. Sometimes you need somebody else's support. I'm just curious. I don't have an answer why it's in singular. I just thought I'd ask, but I think they're of one mind makes a lot of sense to me. Hold on 1 second. The Gemara says, 1 second. Oh, so this is, I don't know, but 1 second. The Gemara says, what is Bayamim hahem? Why is it plural on those days as opposed to one night? Balayla hahu, one, I don't know, it could have said anything. That he was sitting in the courtyard and Ahasuerus called for Esther every night. And remember, they had different palaces, the king and the queen. And he kept asking the night guard to bring him water or maybe something else, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That's the Yamim hahem. That Ahasuerus was doing something over and over and annoying the guards. And these 2 guards, Bigtan and Teresh, got so annoyed that they decided to lay hands on the king and kill him. Does that make sense to anybody? I wasn't sure that that was logical. The only thing it did was explain the Yamim hahem. Yes, Len.
Okay, 3 things. 1, Mordechai becomes a legitimate witness and the matter is investigated. And that is absolutely crucial, but I'm not going to go into why. And the second thing is that part of the plot is missing, which indicates that this text is corrupt. This text is not an original text. Something is missing. And that should alert us to the fact that there are serious problems all through this text.
Okay, go on. Third thing.
The third thing is, I had the third thing and I missed it.
All right, we'll come back to you. No problem.
Oh,
So, no,
okay.
you found it?
Oh yes, they were hanged only after the matter was investigated.
Right, you said that. Oh, okay. So one
Right,
second,
but
we haven't.
how is the matter investigated? There's
Right.
no evidence in the text that describes the investigation
Mhm.
or describes how Ahasuerus accepted Queen, and this is going through Queen Esther. It is not Mordecai directly. It is going through Queen Esther. Esther told it to the king in Mordecai's name. So in other words, Esther is not a Jew, but Esther brings the Jew, and therefore the king is open to the testimony of the Jew. So this
That
is
is
another.
really, really interesting what you're saying, because we spoke about Ahasuerus being anti-Semitic. And there does seem to be a play in between, a tension in between relying on the Jews, believing, understanding that the Jews have wisdom, and yet, and therefore he is relying on Mordecai's testimony, especially by Yibukasha Davar. They checked it out, which we haven't read yet, so we're not quite there yet. But maybe they found the rope, or maybe they found the poison, or something like that. So great, thank you very much. I
think also the word Sar is actually like a captain. In Joshua 5, the word Sar means captain, and it's often translated as eunuch.
What word?
Isn't it Sarisim? Isn't that the?
Sarisim is eunuch, yeah.
Well, but in I think maybe now there's an argument about the letters and the vowels and everything, and I get it. But it seems to me that the more likely attribution here is that they were not chamberlains, they were officers, they were captains, and that gives them a higher status.
Makes sense.
Just like Haman has a higher
100%.
status.
Yes, 100%. I agree with you. Yep.
Okay.
So Rashi says that one of the reasons, Rashi's take and many others is that Mordecai was part of the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin were the 70 elders who were very wise, and they needed to know how to interrogate witnesses. So one of the entrance exams to be on the Sanhedrin was to know all these different languages. I don't know how you could learn 70 languages. That seems completely over the top for me. I mean, I know 2 fluently and a little bit of French and a smattering, abyssal of Yiddish. That's about it. Bigtan and Teresh spoke an obscure language of Tursi, according to Rashi, and thought that no one would know this. And that's where it comes from. But I love this idea that to be on the Sanhedrin, you had to know, and if the Jews were scattered all over, they all might have spoken different languages, although I would think that all Jews might speak Hebrew, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So anyway, that is one way of understanding. We all may have learned this midrash when we're children, that the reason Mordechai knew is because he was on the Sanhedrin and he knew many languages. Therefore, he was able to understand what they were saying and overheard them, and they thought nobody understood them. So this is an explanation of why on the Sanhedrin you needed to know. Why do you have to know many languages just because you're on the Sanhedrin? By the way, here's an answer to what you said. 1 second. Okay, let's just continue to 22 and 23. The matter of Bigtan and Teresh became known to Mordechai. He told Esther the queen, and that's interesting. It could have just said Vayaged Lester, and he told Esther, but I'm assuming it says Esther Malka to remind us she's the queen, so she has access to the king's ear. But Tomer Esther Lamelech b'Shem Mordechai. But does anybody know what we learn about this from this pasuk, that Esther told the king in the name of Mordechai? Anybody know what is a very famous teaching that we learn from this verse?
Whenever you teach something, you give it in the name of the person you learned it from.
Exactly. So 1 second, there are a whole bunch of kids. Hi, everybody. Hi. Just saying hello to a lot of wonderful teenagers. So it's not only, Helen, what you said, that you should say things in the name of the person, but what happens because she said in the name of Mordecai. Remember, much later on in chapter 6, when the king can't sleep, he asks to bring the book of whatever, what was it called, Book of Remembrances or something. And then he finds out that Mordecai is the one who saved him. And then he found out that Mordecai never got a reward. And that's how the Jews were saved. So what we say, the ma'amar, the saying of, they're being very quiet and respectful. They really are. When you say something b'shem amro, in the name of the person who you're quoting, you bring geula la'olam. You bring redemption or salvation to the world. So it is a great expansion of one time when that happens, but that is the ma'amar. That is what we learn from it. Vayivukash hadavar, and this is what Lance was saying. The matter was investigated. So, one second. How is it that it was investigated according to this explanation? They were checked when they were on guard duty and discovered that they were not at their posts. And that is how it was found that they were plotting against the king. Because why aren't you at your post? I assume if there's two people, then one might say, I need to take a break, but they shouldn't both be missing. And that's how they discovered it. And it was found to be true. Both of them were hanged on the tree. It was in the book Divrei Hayamim Chronicles, Lifnei HaMelech. So what is, excuse me, Robert signing in from Givatayim. Amazing. Welcome to Israel. Lifnei HaMelech. Before the king, it was written in front of the king. What does that mean? Yeah, Lance.
What is the Hebrew word for diary?
Yoman.
And is that a direct translation of the word diary?
I think so. It comes from the word yom, which means day.
Day. So it could be diary is one thing, and day is like the chronicle of the day. In other words, it must
that's
be.
That's what it is. Divrei, the thing, well, yoman is a modern word. They didn't use that. Divrei hayamim is what Chronicles 1 and 2 are called in Hebrew. The things that happened those days.
Yeah.
Okay, Phyllis and Ted. Thank you, Lance. Phyllis and Ted.
Say this is also an opportunity that that Esther shows that she's sort of protecting Mordecai the way he was watching over her. Now here's her chance to do something to protect him.
Fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. By the way, I want to say we often say that there was a turning point when Esther donned royalty, and we'll discuss that again when we get to Perek Daled, I think, 4th or 5th chapter, I can't remember. But here you're pointing out, Phyllis, that actually she was proactive even before. Very nice. I never thought of that. Beautiful. Anybody else, Vivian? Vivian, did you want to say something?
Well, they had a record of way that Mordecai had saved the king's life, and nothing was done to reward him for it.
Right.
So he had to find a reward.
Right.
And so the king thought it would be a really nice idea to bring him through the town and then
Wait. That's in Perek Shesh. We're not up to the 6th Perek. We're here. I just asked why it says Lipnei HaMelech. Why did it have to be written down before the king, in front of the king? So here's a midrash. 1 second. The Gra, the Vilna Gaon says, there was an official scribe, but usually things were not written down in front of the king. It was just written down, like the scribe was told, and the scribe wrote it. The scribe didn't sit in front of the king all the time. That's why the Pasuk Dafka said Lifnei HaMelech in front of the king, because it was part of the miracle, again, thinking of Hashem in the background. Who was the scribe? According to the Gra, Shimshi, the son of Haman, was the scribe. And he didn't want to write it down, because you would assume that if Haman and Zeresh were anti-Semitic, which we're going to get to, then their children very probably were anti-Semitic. Somebody said to me, I can't remember who it was, sorry, that why were the sons of Haman hanged? We doesn't say anything that they did anything specifically bad, but this midrash helps us understand that perhaps they were also anti-Semitic, probably because they grew up in a home that was anti-Semitic, and therefore they did do things or were very active. Lance, I just want to move on. Is it something quick?
May I make one point?
Just quick.
You're familiar, you know Rabbi Zev Farber?
Yeah.
Okay, he's a graduate of YCT.
Right.
He's also involved with Torah.com.
Okay.
And he has overtly stated that there are contradictions all through Jewish literature that cannot easily be explained. And because of that, yeshiva type people have branded him a heretic. And
Wait, what does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Because you are expressing a rabbinic position with filling in all these gaps. I am a professor of literature, and I am suggesting that these gaps are gaps. In other words, there is no way we can know what was intended here. And I can point out, but I'm not going to do it.
That's why it's a
that there is a
midrash.
tremendous contradiction in this text that makes absolutely no sense. But I'm not going to talk about it. Thank you.
Why
And
don't
I'm
you
going
write
to
it
shut
in,
up.
you can write it into the chat. I don't know what that has to do with Zev Farber, but okay. I don't know what the connection is to Zev Farber, but I am bringing a certain lens. That doesn't mean other people can't bring other lenses. Of course people can. So anyway, the idea of it being Lifnei HaMelech is because it was in front of the king and Esther told the king, then he didn't let Shimshi off the hook. He said, write it down. It's part of Divrei Yamim. So the reason that these midrashim come up is that they explain the words in the text that seem extraneous or different. That is the reason. That's how you get midrashim. Okay. And that's it. That is it for my notes. That is it for my notes on chapter 2. I thought we would spend most of the class, but we're going to start today and we'll finish next week. I want to take a pause. I'm sharing a source sheet. Just a moment. Which I can send you a link to, actually. Let's see if this works. Okay, people see this?
Yes.
So we are going to be meeting Haman in the next chapter. Chapter 3 is well known for the first time that Haman comes on the scene. What I want to do is, whatever time we have left, and then we'll continue next week if we don't finish, I wanted to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism throughout the ages and see where, a little bit of where it comes up and see if we see more pieces of this as we go along. Okay. So reading from the first one about, everybody just take a pause, put aside for a moment Megillat Esther, and we're doing a reset and back to the original. We're repeating with something we did in the introduction, but this is a little deeper dive. Rabbi Sachs, of blessed memory, says there are 2 types of hate. Anti-Semitism is different from xenophobia. By the way, I didn't know what xenophobia was. I had to look that up. What is xenophobia? How would you define xenophobia, Marvin? Of other nationalities, fear of the stranger. So there's a general fear of the stranger, and then there's anti-Semitism. So let's see what Rabbi Sachs says. Anti-Semitism is the paradigm case of irrational hatred. Of course, fear of the stranger is also irrational hatred. In the Middle Ages, Jews were accused of poisoning wells, spreading the plague, and in one of the most absurd claims ever, the blood libel, they were suspected of killing Christian children to use their blood to make matzot for Pesach. This was self-evidently impossible. That did not stop people from believing it. Anti-Semitism was the supreme irrationality of the age of reason. Now, sadly, we are seeing many echoes of that today, where there are claims of Jews doing things which are not based, or they may have some tangential base in reality. I'm not saying that the poisoning wells, the blood libel, but you're going to see, yes, Lance?
The word anti-Semitism, I think, is much later than in like 19th century. And I think one of the main reasons that there was hostility to the Jews is that the Christian religion could not tolerate a viable Judaism. just as Islam cannot tolerate Judaism or Christianity. It's a religious thing. And what it means is if you have a sect, you are right, everybody else in the world is wrong. And if for example, the Puritans couldn't handle the idea that the Anglicans were much better off than the Puritans. It just undermined their whole mindset.
So you think
that was what's going on here.
So you think
I love Rabbi Sachs. Rabbi Sachs is brilliant, and I understand. I have a collection of hundreds of his sermons.
Wait, 1 second, Lance. That doesn't negate what he said, by the way. You're just saying that it comes from fear of other religion or trying to be right. That doesn't negate this history, what he's saying. So your thought is anti-Semitism comes from hatred or fear of other religions.
No, but what it does, what is missing here is the ultimate confrontation between the Pharisees and the Samaritans. The Pharisees hated the Samaritans.
Wait, 1 second. 1 second.
That's where anti-Semitism comes from, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
But that's within Judaism. So that's not anti-Semitic.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Samaritans are not considered Jews.
Okay. What?
Samaritans are not considered Jews.
After Jesus? Got it. Okay.
And if you look in the New Testament, you will find that the Samaritans are treated really well and that Jesus is called a Samaritan.
Okay,
which explains why he was persecuted by the Jews, not the Romans.
This feels like a really complicated topic that I don't know enough about.
It is my complicated topic, but you're suggesting, what you're saying is Rabbi Sachs understands anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is an extremely complex topic, and I'm sure Vivian understands the historical problems in trying to understand any of this. Am I right, Vivian?
Okay. So you're suggesting, bottom line, is that it comes from fear or hatred of other religions or trying to prove that your religion is right and the others are wrong. Would that be a way to distill what you said without all the history of why? Okay, fine. Let's keep that in the backs of our minds. Okay, now let's go and see if we see anti-Semitism, which is something we talked about at the beginning. If we see it in the anywhere before Megillat Esther. So we may have spoken about this. Not everybody was here for the introduction, so I want to go back over it. This is about the king of Egypt, Pharaoh. People remember that? We read it at the beginning of Shemot. We're just now starting Vayikra, the third book. This is the second book. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Hinei am b'nei Yisrael rav ve'atzu mimenu. Let us deal with them nitchakma, shrewdly or cleverly, so they may not increase. Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. Now, is there any logical basis to this? Does this feel logical? It sounds sort of logical. Do you think they had any reasonable reason why they would assume that would happen?
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Debbie.
All right. I have a hard time, like if people, public figures say, these immigrants, migrants coming across are not animals. They are this, they are that. They're bringing, I find that difficult to understand. I mean, maybe historically it's different because anti-Semitism is so, throughout history, but the hate and what happens and the nature of it, what it does to people, what it says about people, I think is the same. I don't think the fact that maybe throughout the ages we haven't, people haven't hated Mexicans doesn't make any difference for the real moment of hate and what happens.
So you don't see a differentiation between anti-Semitism and xenophobia in general. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think in the specific, anti-Semitism is one type of people. It's all of us, for all the years. So it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter how good we are. We might be hated. And for the moment that it happens, the hate that is carried out, no, I don't. I mean, if we hate irrationally, hate people that we don't know or vilify them, I don't see.
You don't think it stands on its own as standing out I think part of it is that maybe because we've lasted so long, is that we have many, many examples from a
Right.
very long time, as opposed to other nations that don't.
Yeah, it's influenced our view of ourselves too. I mean, like, how they say, like it's not only how we're proud of being Jews and everything like that, but there's this leitmotif all the time of like somehow we're viewed in such a funny way. And so that, let's say there's one Jew who acts like the stereotype of the Jew. I mean, it happens, loves money, or I don't know whatever our stereotype is. And then we sort of cringe a little bit, don't you? Yeah, like a little cringe, like, I think, I mean, so I think it affects us also, and it affects the world. I mean, that we have this incredible vein of hate that goes through.
Right.
I'm not knocking that. I'm not saying, but at the moment when people act or deny migrants entry, or kick people out, or arrest people irrational. I mean, that I think is like the same.
You think it's very similar? Okay, gotcha. Okay, I hear that. Any other comments before we go back, Lance?
Okay, I think that anti-Semitism can be seen as a front. Consider October 7th, 2023. Hamas comes in under the idea that they're resisting Israel and occupation, et cetera, But what do? They butcher. They butcher babies, but they rape and torture women. And I think that in this case, certainly, anti-Semitism is a cover for misogyny. And I think personally, misogyny is the root of all evil, but that's just my thought. But I think that if you think about it,
that anti-Semitism allows masquerades, speaking of Megillat Esther, masquerades as different. I think that's the point that I feel is very powerful also, that in different eras and different parts of our history, there are always different reasons given. But here, when we look at Pharaoh, he's like the first time, this group, they had no indication that the Jews would rise up against them. In fact, the Jews were very thankful that they had given them a place to live in Egypt. There was no indication at all that the Jews would do anything. And yet something happened that Pharaoh was worried, got scared. That is the first time. It's not called anti-Semitic. It doesn't say because they're Jews. And I hear what you're saying, Debbie, it's because it's about us. And yet, I don't know if there are other sects or groups of people that have this label of anti-Semitism. Maybe you could say racism. That's another word that could be used that talks about a certain group of people. But anti-Semitism seems to have its own life separate from all different kinds of xenophobia. And yes, we're doing a deep dive because we're the ones who are affected by it. I agree with that. But anyway,
look at the Megillah, Rabbani Bracha. I can make a very good case that the Megillah is fundamentally misogynist and not anti-Semitic.
Okay, so keep that as we go along. We don't have to say a whole thing about it. I want to go back to the last thing maybe I'll say here is Dara Horn. Are people familiar with Dara Horn? She wrote People Love Dead Jews,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
That's the name. It's supposed to, I haven't read it yet.
Great article in the Atlanta magazine, which
Yeah, I don't
you
know if
only
I
can
can
get
read
if
it.
somebody, you have to get it from somebody who has a subscription.
Right,
Had a
right.
subscription, but it was really wonderful. It
I
was
heard her
real,
speak
yeah.
about anti-Semitism when I was at a convention, not a convention. I was a LEAP fellow in Philly when I missed the class one week when I was in Philadelphia. We actually heard her speak at the university, it was fascinating in my mind. And Marvin told me he has the book, so now I can borrow it from him. So that's good. I want to read what Dara Horn said. Why the most educated people in America fall for anti-Semitic lies, which felt really powerful to me. She said she has colleagues at Harvard and other places, and was like she couldn't get on board with them. She said, why people are smart? Why are they believing stories? Let's say there were stories about blood libels that came up again that just had no basis in fact. It was just an old trope that came up again. The through line of anti-Semitism for thousands of years has been the denial of truth and the promotion of lies. These lies range in scope from conspiracy theories to Holocaust denial, to the blood libel, to the currently popular claim that Zionism is racism, that Jews are settler colonialists, and that Jewish civilization isn't indigenous to the land of Israel. Like just that part. The Jews are not indigenous to the land of Israel. I saw a discussion with two Native Americans about that. And she said, one of the Native Americans, she said that maybe because Jews have been scattered all over the world, maybe that gave people a reason to say, well, Jews aren't indigenous. And by the way, one thing that I think is going to come up, and Lance, you touched on it, and I think that's something for us to keep in mind. What does it mean to be Jewish? Is it cultural? Is it religious? What was it in the past? What is it today? I mean, I had friends, I worked with people, I worked in software in Israel. Most of the people, the vast majority were not, they were secular Israelis, but felt very Jewish and Israeli. And they didn't keep the religion. I mean, they may have culturally done a Rosh Hashanah meal with apples and honey and eat pomegranates. They may have had some form of a Seder. They may have come to Shul on Yom Kippur. They had Purim, festivities. They light candles on Hanukkah, possibly without a bracha. They may have had a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, things like that. But they considered that cultural. And so I think that I don't hear this talked about that much. To me, this feels, as an Israeli, I feel it very deeply. What does it mean to be Jewish? And Lance, 1 second, Lance. I think
Yeah.
because we're out of time. But I think this is something for us to keep. And that was so interesting to hear her say that the Native Americans have just been in America the whole time, whereas Jews have been scattered. Of course, we've been scattered because we've been expelled from the land of Israel. These lies are all part of the foundational big lie that anti-Semitism itself is a righteous act of resistance against evil because Jews are collectively evil and have no right to exist. Criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic. Jews are now required to recite this humiliatingly, I don't know where to put the accent, sorry. Humiliatingly. Thank you. Okay, whatever. You guys get the word. Obvious sentence that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic because these things that are made up, or some of that, or these labels, where do they come from? If they don't, like, you don't hear that being said about Ukraine or some other places where there are also wars. As the price of admission to public discourse about their own demonization in debates with people who are often unable to name the relevant river or sea that they're going from river to sea. I mean, I've seen people being asked, they're like, I don't know, but that's what people say. So I'm saying, what river, what sea, Jews live there? No, I don't actually know. Many legitimate concerns about Israel's policies towards Palestinians, and the many legitimate concerns about Israel's current war in Gaza cannot explain these eliminationist chants and slogans, the glee with which they are delivered, the lawlessness that has accompanied them, or the open assaults on Jews. Like, if you really believe that it's Israelis who have the wrong attitude or the wrong war with, or the way Palestinians, the way those in Gaza have been treated, the way it hasn't, let's say, been resolved in the right way, why are you attacking a Jew in Crown Heights? What's the connection? That is a clear connection and thread that makes us understand that there are underpinnings here. Wait, Marvin has something to say.
Primitive years in a feeling of inferiority of your own people. And when you can find a scapegoat that you can pin it on, it makes life much easier.
Correct. But why the Jews so often? A good scapegoat. Yeah, that's right. Anti-Semitism isn't, this is what she says, anti-Semitism isn't primarily a social prejudice. It's a conspiracy theory, the big lie that Jews are supervillains manipulating others. The righteous fight for justice, therefore, does not require protecting Jews as a vulnerable minority. Instead, it requires taking Jews down. And I agree that looking for a scapegoat, but we are out of time. So Lance, hold your thought, write it down for next week. We started, there's much more. I'm just wondering, I could give you the source sheet, but I think we'll just continue it next week. It's about anti-Semitism throughout the ages. And then we will have heard about Haman. Let's think about that when we read the Megillah. We'll be hearing it twice, Saturday night and Sunday morning. And last time we had a very rich discussion about theology. And I think that this has opened up a discussion about what is anti-Semitism, which we touched on at the beginning, but now feels richer. Is it about being a scapegoat, as Marvin said? Is it about wanting to prove that your religion is better, as Lance said? Is it about fear? Is it, I don't know. I read once that God created an entity called anti-Semitism, which feels horrific, and that it just will always exist as if it's this own black, horrible cloud. All right, I'm going to leave people. I must leave you with something a little more positive before we go into Purim. But I want to remind you that tomorrow's Tanit Esther. For those who are able to fast, we invite you to fast. For those who are able to come on to our davening, either in person or on Zoom, please do that. There is an initiative to say Shema Yisrael at the Kotel and all over the world. They were debating, I guess, between 11 or 11:30. It is 11:30 tomorrow. That is Tanit Esther. Let us remember, as I explained at the beginning, that Sorer HaYehudim, the person who was the enemy of Israel, Haman Sorer HaYehudim, also means Tzror, like a bunch of keys, a Tzror Maftechot, or the Tzror that the bags of the brothers, their sacks, Tzror that Haman, or this hatred, is actually making us bunch closer together. So not only is a hater or an enemy, but also making us a group that holds together. So let's remember that and keep that in mind, that we care about each other, we love each other in spite of our differences, whatever they are, and we should hold on to that love. And I'm wishing everybody a meaningful day tomorrow, Tanit Esther, as much as you can. There are many initiatives. I'm teaching class on Avinu Malkeinu in the morning, in English, not in Hebrew, tomorrow, if anybody wants to join that. And also in honor of fast day or commemoration, because we say Avinu Malkeinu on fast days. In Israel, it has been recited for a while, and in other places in America, it's about, calling out to God, and I think that's a good day to do it. And I hope that your Purim, you find a way to rise above the sadness and heaviness and fear and heart sickness that we've been feeling all the time, to find moments of joy. So send love. And I hope to see you next Wednesday. Thank you as always for joining.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Purim Sameach, everybody.
Thank you for including Dara Horn. I
Yes.
love her.
If you get to read that article, I really recommend it.
Yeah, we have it. We
Send
have
it
it.
to me.
Yeah.
So somebody could send it to me, but not the link, because I don't have a subscription. If you can copy it.
Oh,
I
I
don't
can,
have
I know,
your
I can,
email,
I
but
have the article.
Oh.
I can Send it to
Great.
you, Rabani? Yeah, I can
Please.
send it to you because my brother-in-law sent it to me. That whole
Awesome.
article. You can do it to a number of people once a month. I don't know what,
Great.
but I'll send it
Awesome.
to you.
All right.
I think
Thanks,
you also sent it
everyone.
to me.
Okay, bye-bye.
All
Who's
right,
me?
bye-bye.
Who's me?
Helen.
Helen. Okay, yes, I will. Okay, bye-bye.